Hello everyone and welcome to the ISEP Ecuador and Bolivia pre-departure orientation. My name is Kira Hawkinson. I'm the Student Services Officer for Spain and Latin America. This is our agenda for today. We're going to cover culture and daily life, academic matters, health and safety before you go, and keeping in touch with ISEP. All right, let's start with life in Ecuador and Bolivia. Right, so Ecuadorian and Bolivian culture. So family life is the center of life in Ecuador and Bolivia. People usually live with their families until they get married, so you'll likely find that your classmates live at home. I know for me, I personally studied abroad in Ecuador when I was in college. I did a semester in Ecuador, and I had a host sister and also a host brother. He was in his mid to late 20s and he still lived at home, so that's a pretty common practice in most of Latin America. For both countries, they're a bit more traditional and conservative, so be sure to greet people formally and research appropriate attire for various occasions and locations. So for example, it's not as common to wear things like shorts and flip-flops or sportswear to class in more formal settings. You want to leave that attire for if you're working out or going to the beach. Wear more like jeans, pants, blouses, shirts, that kind of stuff, or when you go to class, and a little bit more formal occasions. Their population is really diverse. A large portion of the population in both Ecuador and Bolivia is actually indigenous. Over 40% of Bolivia's population is indigenous. So if you have a chance while you're there to learn a little bit about the history and culture of indigenous peoples in Ecuador and Bolivia, I would definitely do so. I know when I studied abroad, I was able to do a 6-week internship for an indigenous ecotourism association. So it was a really cool window into just daily life for indigenous people in Ecuador, and to see learn a little bit more about their culture. So the main religion is Roman Catholic, but because of this large indigenous population, many have blended Catholicism with traditional beliefs. So there'll be a mixture of Catholic holidays and also indigenous holidays as well throughout the year in both Ecuador and Bolivia. Language spoken in Ecuador and Bolivia is Spanish and Quechua, and there's also Aymara, which is only in Bolivia. So you'll hear both of those languages spoken. Most of the indigenous populations will speak Quechua, but they'll also speak Spanish as well. There are people who also speak English, but definitely take the opportunity to practice your Spanish and even learn some words in Quechua or other indigenous languages as well. So daily life in Ecuador and Bolivia. So in both countries and in Latin America in general, people start their day pretty early. Many people are out the door by 7 a.m. or earlier. I know for when I was living in Ecuador, I had to be up pretty early for a class. So just be prepared for that. In Ecuador, they have pretty standard eating times. I would say pretty similar to the US, between 6:30 and 9 a.m. for breakfast, 12 to 2 p.m. for lunch, and 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. for dinner. Bolivia, Bolivians tend to have a really small breakfast, maybe like coffee with pastry or something like that, early in the morning, and then at around 10 to 10:30 in the morning, they'll have a short break from work and other activities to have a small snack. Lunch is 12 to 2:30. The people typically take a siesta as well. And then dinner is 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Beware that a lot of stores are closed on Sundays, so check their schedules first before you go there. You might want to do more of your shopping and different things like that on Fridays and Saturdays. All right, a couple things to know for words and phrases and stuff like that. In Ecuador and Bolivia, they use the term no más or siga no más. It's added to the end of many expressions. So many of you already know no más as no more, but in Ecuador and Bolivia, they'll add it to a lot of words or phrases at the end and say, so it basically means, no problem. Continue right along. So for example, like see you no más, like go ahead, no problem. So it took me a while. Sometimes I still didn't quite understand why no más was added to certain words, but you'll definitely hear that quite a bit from local people. And then Bolivia, they use the term pues. It's normally in Spanish is a filler word or similar to, well, or then in English, but Bolivians use it as a little bit emphasis on phrases. So, for example, si pues, yeah, for sure. No pues, no way, yeah, pues. Come on, ahorita pues, do it now. So, just a few things to be aware of. And then another term that you may hear quite a bit is Pachamama. In Ecuador, Bolivia is the indigenous term for, or I believe it's Quechua for Mother Earth. So you'll hear this term quite a bit. Mother Earth is really important to a lot of indigenous cultures, particularly in South America. So again, if you have the opportunity, learn a little bit more about indigenous cultures while you're there. Markets are really big in Ecuador and Bolivia. I highly suggest going to one of these artisanal markets if you have the chance. I know when I was in Ecuador, I bought a lot of amazing, sweaters and tapestries and blankets and things like that. Just so you know, it is haggling is a common practice, or bartering. It's kind of part of the culture there. It's kind of expected, so don't feel too bad about it. I know at first I kind of felt bad bartering about, like a sweater that was only like $15 or something like that, but they actually kind of enjoy it to a degree. Obviously, I don't think this applies to necessarily all markets in Ecuador and Bolivia, so you may want to talk to your host family or your host coordinator about where it is appropriate, where it isn't. But I found that most of these artisanal markets, you can see a picture there at the top, it's pretty common to do, and it's actually pretty fun, and it's a good way to practice your Spanish, and I actually got pretty good at it while I was there. All right, interpersonal relationships. So one kiss, typically two women or a man and a woman will greet each other with one kiss on the cheek, and two men will usually do like a hug or a handshake, depending on how well they know each other. Latin Americans in general tend to stand pretty close when they're speaking, and do a lot of physical contact, are very touchy-feely, so just be prepared for that if you're not used to that, depending on the country you're coming from. Ecuadorians and Bolivians are very friendly and social, but they don't always go out of their way to introduce themselves to a new person, so you might just have to put yourself out there a little bit, but feel free to make the first move and introduce yourself to a new friend. Just one quick note, this does not apply to nightlife, where men often can be quite aggressive with showing their interest in women. Machismo is still a very common thing throughout a lot of Latin America. So just, it's particularly for women, be wary of that. I know for me, when I was in Ecuador, I experienced quite a bit of catcalling and stuff, and street harassment and stuff like that. I would say, best advice is probably just to, as tempting as it is to engage in that sort of activity, or, say something back or retaliate, the best thing you probably do is just ignore it and keep walking, as annoying as it is. And, but yeah, because you never know what people are like, and just to stay safe in general, but be prepared for that kind of stuff to happen. Particularly in Bolivia, many people may not necessarily speak English or Spanish. As I said, there's a large indigenous population in Bolivia, so they may not speak English or Spanish. So don't take that as their unresponsiveness as a rude. They just may not actually understand you. So just be aware of that. And then another good reason to learn some, indigenous words or phrases while you're there. Another thing to note is that Ecuadorians and Bolivians can be very direct, especially with people they consider to be a good friend. So don't be surprised or upset if someone calls you like flaco or flaca, gordo or gorda. It's just supposed to be, a term of endearment, something cutesy that they say to people. It can, particularly for Americans, it can be kind of jarring if someone's calling you literally like, skinny or fat or something like that. But it's just, don't take it as literal. I know that that's, something I experienced quite a lot in my travels throughout Latin America. And when you studied abroad in Ecuador, you just have to know that it's not something that's, meant to be taken very literally and very seriously. Right, housing. So students that are going to be in Ecuador, so at Universidad de Casa Grande, the housing options are homestay and student house. It's in the majority of people are going to do homestays, and then Universidad Privada Boliviana will stay in a host family. So again, most people will stay in a host family. They may be in a shared room with another student, or maybe on their own with the host family. Usually your host ISEP coordinator or university coordinator will ask you to complete a form asking for your preferences to pair you up with the right family, make sure that you have the right fit. And they may ask you for any specific considerations. So for example, if you have any dietary restrictions or medical needs or requirements, just be sure to let them know that in advance. Meals. So there's a lot of really delicious traditional meals in Ecuador and Bolivia. One of them is in Ecuador is locro de papa, which is a potato stew. You'll find that in Ecuador and I believe in Bolivia as well, and a lot of other parts of South America. Soups and stews are very popular. Don't be surprised if someone serves you soup, you know, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, every meal, or I know depending on where you're coming from, soup may not be a common breakfast item. I know I've served it quite a few times for breakfast. The soup is always delicious, but just be, you know, prepared for that. That's pretty common. Cuy asado, which is roasted guinea pig. I, you know, was vegetarian at the time that I stayed around Ecuador, so I did not try it. I also wasn't too interested in eating a guinea pig, but I know that's a pretty popular dish for tourists to try while they're there, so you can definitely try that if you want. Lapingachos, you can see a picture of that, the second one down. It's fried potato pancakes. These are super good. They usually serve it with, you could see, like either eggs, onions, tomatoes, and avocado on top. Super delicious dish. And then something that you'll definitely see if you're going to Ecuador is ají, which is the hot sauce. You can see a picture of it at the top. This is pretty much served with every meal, especially lunch. You'll see it a lot of, you know, restaurants or different places that you go to will have it just automatically at the beginning on the table. And it's a hot sauce that's made with ají, which is a type of pepper. And then I think it's cilantro and some other ingredients, but you'll definitely be able to try ají when you're there. In Bolivia, they have salteña, which is a baked patty stuffed with different ingredients like broth, vegetables, meat. You can see an example of it on the third picture down. Essentially kind of looks like a big sort of pastry, but then it's stuffed with savory items, so it's not sweet. They have pique macho, which is minced meat with fried potatoes and peppers, tomatoes, boiled eggs, or hard-boiled eggs, sliced onions, and you can see a picture of that at the bottom. And then there's also picante de pollo, which is spicy chicken. So if you have a chance, definitely try some of the traditional dishes while you're there. All right, so for restaurants, it's very common for restaurants to have cheap lunch specials. I know when I was in Ecuador, lunch could be as cheap as like $3 to $4. Dinner tended to be a bit more expensive, but depending on where you're coming from, it's not super expensive. So it would be around like $9 to $10 for dinner. I'm not sure if that's the same in Bolivia, but I know in Ecuador it's about $9 to $10 for dinner. There's a lot of beef that is served in Ecuador and Bolivia, but there are vegetarian options, and it's becoming more popular. As I said, I was vegetarian when I studied abroad in Ecuador. You just have to be very clear that soy vegetariana, and that you do not eat meat at all. I will say on occasion, people are not really used to vegetarian, so what they would do was sometimes I was served soup that had they just took the big chunks of meat out, but it was cooked with meat. So if you are very, very, you know, strict vegetarian, you cannot eat meat at all, it'll make you sick or something. You just have to be very clear about that and maybe just check the soup or stew that you get first before eating it. As for tipping, I believe it's already included in the bill, but if you have excellent service, it's nice to tip an extra 10%. Great technology in Ecuador and Bolivia. Wi-Fi is available in people's homes at your host family, and then most cafes and restaurants. You may have to pay for it or something like that. Plug types are A and B in Ecuador, and Bolivia uses type A and C. Cell phone providers in Ecuador are Claro and Movistar. There's a few others as well. And then cell phone providers in Bolivia are Entel, Tigo, and Viva. So there's a couple of different options you can do when studying abroad as far as cell phone use. You can talk to your home provider about international plans. Those tend to be a bit more expensive, but you can still see what kind of deals or plans that they have. What you could do is rent a SIM card or a cell phone from one of those providers while you're there. I would just say about a SIM card, you do have to get your phone unlocked by your home provider first before you can, before the phone will accept the foreign SIM card. Or you could do what I did when I was in Ecuador is I used my smartphone when I had Wi-Fi, and then I used a burner phone, small little phone. I just added minutes to it at different kiosks, added minutes to it, and then I just used that for texting and calling in case of emergencies and stuff like that. All right, finances in Ecuador and Bolivia. So Ecuador actually uses the US dollar. Quick note, I will say that coins are a bit more widely used in Ecuador than in the US. So I found that my coins were very precious and important to me because they can go quite a long way. In Ecuador, you can see some examples of them there. They have like 50-cent coins and stuff like that. And transportation is pretty cheap in Ecuador. I know my bus trips, you know, taking the bus would be like 25 cents or something like that. So it's really important that you keep those coins at all times. It was really useful to have to keep as many coins as I could. In Bolivia, they use a Boliviano, which is divided into 100 cents or centavos. $1, one US dollar is equivalent to 6.87 BOB or Boliviano. Cash is more commonly used than cards, especially in small stores. So definitely have cash with you at all times. If you're traveling around, you know, you're going to buy stuff, especially when you're in those markets that I mentioned earlier, one of those artisanal markets. I don't think any of them accepted cards. It was all cash. So be sure to get some cash with you first before you go to those markets, especially. You can use your, you should be able to use your bank account from home. You can ask them about your provider about, transaction fees and see if it's possible to get a card with low or no international fees. I think most cards are accepted. I think the only card that sometimes has a little bit of difficulty in other countries is American Express. Be careful about large bills. People typically do not like making change or don't really like accepting larger bills. And also watch out for counterfeit bills as well. Another thing I'll point out is something that happened to me quite a lot when I was in Ecuador is when you're, getting cash from someone, you're paying for something. Sometimes they'll give you $1, $5, whatever, $10 bill that was is kind of in rough shape, dirty, crinkled up. And then I would try to give it to I would use it, at another store or whatever. And they would say, no, I can accept it. It's like not in good shape. So just be careful of that. If you get someone tries to give you like $5 that's looks like it's in pretty bad shape, maybe ask for a different one. Just because you may have a hard time having someone else accept that later on. So. Right, sports and leisure. Obviously in Ecuador and Bolivia and most of Latin America, soccer or football is very popular. So if you have a chance to go to a game, I would. The only thing I'll say is that sometimes football matches can be a bit more rowdy than maybe what you're used to. So I would just be a little cautious of that and go with someone like your host family or something like that. Other sports that are popular, baseball, swimming, running, hiking are also very popular there. I know a lot of people like to go running in the big parks that are there in both Ecuador and Bolivia. As you may already know, Ecuador and Bolivia are super biodiverse, and so there's no shortage of beautiful landscapes to visit. You can see from the pictures on this slide. So if you have the opportunity, definitely see as much of the countries as you can as far as the natural landscapes. In Ecuador, I would recommend going to Baños. You can see a picture at the top, a girl on the swing. I actually did that swing. That is not me, but I did do that swing where you kind of swing up over the mountains, and it's a super cool experience, not as dangerous as it looks. You can also go to Cotopaxi or Cotacachi. There's a lot of active, beautiful volcanoes. You can see a picture of Cotopaxi there at the bottom. I was able to climb up pretty far on that one. and it's a really cool experience. I have a chance to visit some of those volcanoes. I believe Bolivia has a lot of volcanoes as well. And I mentioned the markets. One that's really famous is called Otavalo in Ecuador. It's a huge market. It has tons of artisanal goods that you can buy. So I would definitely go to one of those markets. I bought so many things when I was there. I wish I even bought more. So definitely go to one of those. I would also recommend going to the Amazonía region. I mean, it's a really amazing experience to be able to go to the Amazon. I would say if you're not big on bugs and stuff like that, I probably wouldn't go there. But if you're okay with it, then I would go there. Obviously, Bolivia is really famous for the salt flats. You can see a picture of there in the middle. So if you have a chance, go to see the salt flats. You can also see Lake Titicaca. I might butcher these names a little bit. Huayna Potosi or Tiwanaku. So there's a lot of really beautiful landscapes, mountains, volcanoes, and stuff like that that you can go visit while you're in Bolivia. All right. I'm not going to go over all of these holidays, but here's kind of the major holidays that take place in Ecuador and Bolivia. Keep in mind that there might also be more indigenous holidays celebrated throughout the year. There's a few mentioned on here, but there's going to be a mixture of like Catholic holidays and indigenous holidays too. So if you have a chance to participate in some of those holidays while you're there. All right, so culture shock. Culture shock is a very real thing that can happen to any of us when we go abroad or study abroad for a long period of time. There's usually kind of that honeymoon period when you first get there. It's very exciting. This is amazing. And then after a few weeks, you might hit that, you know, culture shock where it's like really sinks in, like, I'm going to be here for a long time. You know, this is exhausting. This is a lot of work. I don't know if I can do this. And then it kind of goes in sort of like a roller coaster pattern. I mean, it's different for everyone, but just know that there is an adjustment period and it's not always, you know, it's not always going to be like amazing. I'm so happy all the time. There might be times where you miss your family, or it's just a lot speaking in Spanish the whole time, or even something to consider is the elevation. Depending on where you are in Ecuador and Bolivia, there's some really big elevation changes. I know for me, I was in Quito for my classes, and it's about 10,000 feet. And so I was very exhausted all the time and out of breath and stuff like that. So you just have to be patient with yourself and know that it just takes a long time to, or can take a while to adjust to a new culture, a new country, everything. If it does get to a point, obviously, where it's too overwhelming and you're just not feeling, you know, not feeling better, you're really feeling down, but definitely reach out to me or your host university coordinator, and we can, you know, help you out, try to suggest ways that you can get, you know, more involved or feel like you can better adjust to the country. Here's some reflections from past ISEP students. You can feel free to pause the video and read some of the experiences of past ISEP students. Let's move on to academics. All right, so the higher education system in Ecuador and Bolivia. So in Ecuador, there are 3 levels of higher education. There's associate's degree, there's a bachelor's degree and engineering degree, and then also graduate schools. The universities in Ecuador work on a semester basis. The country operates on the Southern Hemisphere academic calendar, so depending on where you're coming from, maybe flipped from what you're used to. The academic calendar consists of 1 intensive term at the beginning of the calendar year and then 2 ordinary semesters. The intensive term runs from mid-January to early April. The second semester runs from mid-April to early August, and the third semester runs from early September to mid-December. Most students will take about 5 classes per term. You'll spend about 17 to 18 hours per week in a class, or in classes, and then the number of weeks per term, about 17 weeks. In Bolivia, in the first 1 to 2 years, students study basic subjects. The program study lasts 4 to 5 years and leads to a licenciatura, or a professional title. That a little bit. And then the Universidad Boliviana in particular has a modular system. So there are 4 modules in a semester, and a module has 24 sessions of 2 hours every day. Students take 2 classes per module, usually once a month. And then international students should take 2 classes per module if no Spanish classes are needed. And a typical student will spend about 10 hours per course in class, or 20 class hours per week in total. Module has 4 weeks for 3 credit courses and 6 weeks for 4 credit courses. Campus culture. So there's, I definitely recommend asking, they'll probably talk about this a little bit in your on-site orientation when you get there, but if they don't, definitely talk to your host university coordinator about opportunities to get involved. If there's volunteering, community engagement opportunities, there's service learning or internships offered at the university, sports teams, student organizations and groups, campus events and activities. Highly recommend participating in some of these groups or campus events to get a little bit more involved on campus culture. You can meet more local Ecuadorian or Bolivian students and learn more about their lives. And make new friends and stuff like that. So definitely, if you have the opportunity to take part in these, groups, events and stuff like that, do so. Okay, so in Ecuador, lecturing, and then in general in Latin America, lecturing is typically the principal method of instruction in universities. It's changing a little bit. So they'll usually be lecture based, and then with a little bit less maybe open discussion or group work than they are used to at your university. And then an end of term final or a project will likely weigh pretty heavily in your final grade. All right, you can take a look at the grading systems that are used in Ecuador and Bolivia. You can see the US equivalents on the other side. All right, so credit system in Ecuador, run credit is typically equal to 16 hours. That's pretty typical for a lot of universities in Latin America to use more hours than actual credit amount. Courses may have a total of 2, 3, or 4 credits depending on their weekly schedule and hours necessary for individual work outside of the class. However, most courses are going to be worth 3 credits, each one bearing about a 48-hour workload throughout the semester. In Bolivia, UPB works within the European Credit Transfer System, ECTS, so a credit system widely used where credits are assigned corresponding to the amount of workload necessary to complete the course. So hours or work hours, the quantity of contact hours, and difficulty of examinations. And the credits are awarded when a course is successfully completed. So typically 1 ECTS is equivalent to a half of a US credit. All right, interaction with professors. Students say professors are generally approachable. If your first language is not Spanish, your professors may give you an extra break, but they don't usually slow down in lectures, so just be prepared for that. But definitely ask to meet, meet with your professor if you're struggling, having any issues keeping up. Also, if you're having any issues talking or getting a hold of your professor, talking to them at all, or just struggling in general, please feel free to reach out to your host university coordinator. You can also reach out to me as well. All right, moving on to health and safety. Okay, so be sure to review the full health and safety presentation. We have it on our ISEP website. You can review resources such as personal safety while abroad. You can follow your guidance from your peers that will be your local Ecuadorian and Bolivian students that will be there, and also pay attention to all the health and safety regulations that they'll go over in your on-site orientation. Please be sure to review your insurance coverage. We have comprehensive information about ISEP insurance on our ISEP insurance page, what's included in benefits, costs, and all that stuff. So feel free to review that if need be. You can also reach out to insurance@isep.org if you have really specific questions about ISEP insurance coverage. And then just so you know, we do have a 24/7 emergency line there. It's in red there towards the bottom. Please only call this number in health and safety emergencies. Do not call it if you just have, just a general question or something like that. You can always just email me or call me, or, reach out to the host coordinator is probably the best for something specific for on-site. The emergency number in Ecuador is 911, and in Bolivia it is 110. Health and safety in Ecuador and Bolivia. Protests and strikes are kind of a fact of life in Latin America. They're pretty common. Please do not attend even if they're planned peaceful protests. They can turn rowdy or violent. And I know when I was in Ecuador, I think it was actually illegal for foreigners to partake in protests. So in general, just don't participate in protests and strike. It's just really not a good idea. Pay attention to security warnings from your university or the local government. So pay attention, they'll probably go over it again in on-site orientation. Follow local social norms. Mind your pockets. Pickpocketing can be pretty common in many parts of Latin America. So just be really mindful of your stuff, even if you think it's totally fine. Just be a little bit more mindful depending on the country that you're coming from. For me, I used a money bag. It's basically like a kind of like a fanny pack little pouch that you put, it's very thin, and you put it around your waist, and you can put your shirt over it and it's not noticeable, and you can put little like valuables and stuff like that. So in general, just avoid bringing your passport anywhere. Just leave it at your host family or student house, wherever you're staying for the semester of the year. It's just not a good idea to bring your passport around. It's kind of a valuable item, so don't bring that around. Avoid displays of wealth. I wouldn't wear like diamond earrings and stuff like that. Really expensive jewelry. I'd be really careful with your smartphone. I rarely brought that out at all, especially when I was walking around in public. Those are things that can be easily swiped, especially like on public transportation and stuff like that. So in general, just don't bring your don't bring your smartphone out. Another thing along the line of passport, I know for me when I was in Ecuador and I would go out, a lot of times they wouldn't accept your accept a driver's license. Sometimes they would need other forms of ID, so I just had a color copy of my passport instead. I would not recommend bringing your actual passport with you out, especially out at night. All right, so be aware of your surroundings. Again, if you go out, really be careful about, use of alcohol if you choose to drink. So just be, conscious of that. I would, travel in groups, especially at night. Make sure no one's going alone in a taxi or something like that. So again, pay attention from to your on-site orientation. You can also ask your host coordinator personally about like the best and safest way to travel around at night and what are things to avoid. And also, neighborhoods and just general areas that you should just not go to as an international student. All right. Before you go. So packing, so apparel needs will vary depending on your host city. I know definitely for like Ecuador and Bolivia, the climate can change quite a bit depending on where you visit in the country. So just be sure to research a little bit what's the weather average climate like the time of year that you're going to be going. Remember that's the southern hemisphere, so it's going to be different from what you're used to. And also research, is it a dry season? Is it a wet season? Am I going to need a raincoat? Do I know I'm going to be hiking? Do I need hiking boots and stuff like that? But keep in mind that there are a lot of items that you can purchase there, so don't worry if you don't pack like a towel or flip-flops or something like that. I'm sure it's not very difficult to purchase that on site if you need to, so be conscious of that. I would try not to overpack because you're gonna, especially for me, when I studied abroad in Ecuador, like I said, I went to those markets a lot and bought so many things. And so I'm sure that you're going to buy some as well, so I would not overpack. For toiletries, I would bring, if you have a specific item that you like to use that you can't get in your host country, I would bring enough with you to last the entirety of the program. I would highly not recommend having your family ship you any items because it can often be really expensive and take a super long time. I know one girl when I studied abroad, she didn't get, her family sent her something at the beginning of the semester. She didn't get it until like the last few days of the program. Some didn't get it at all. So I would not recommend doing that. Same goes for medications. Bring enough with you to last the entirety of the program. And if you know, I would do a little research. If you know that you can't get that medication in your host country, again, bring enough with you. Or I would also bring your prescription, maybe a note from your doctor, the generic name of the medication, the chemical makeup, because it may be under a different name in your host country. Another note about medication, I would pack it in your carry-on and not your checked luggage, because you don't want to be in a situation where your checked luggage gets lost and you don't have your medication. Electrical needs, we talked about this a little bit earlier for, I think it was A and B for Ecuador and A and C for Bolivia. Just make sure that you have the right converters and adapters with you. Another thing I will say is I would probably avoid bringing a straightener or curling iron or something like that, because even if you have, you know, a converter, usually the voltage doesn't match up, and I've heard horror stories of people burning their hair, so I would not bring those things with you if you can avoid it. I would bring paper copies of important documents in your carry-on. So again, copies of your passport, color clear copies, maybe a copy of your vaccination card, your insurance card, important documents like that, just to have, just in case. You can also upload it to like a Google Drive or something like that. Check your pre-departure information tab in your ISEP portal. There's a lot of important information there, but there's also information about things that are included or not included in your housing, as far as like bedding and towels and stuff like that. So that's good to check before you go, to see if they're those items you need to bring with you, or you can just purchase it there as well. All right, more to do before you go. This is just for ISEP direct students, not ISEP exchange students. For ISEP direct students, your program fee is due 30 days before your program start date, so be sure you pay that. I talked about this earlier, but you can check data plans with your home phone provider, or do some of the other options that I suggested earlier in the video. Make sure that you know the date and location of your host site orientation. If you're not sure what it is, reach out to your host university coordinator. I would write down the address of where you're going and carry it in your carry-on. Again, if you do not know this information, reach out to your host university coordinator. Your host university coordinator's information is located in the Your Contacts tab of your ISEP account. It has their email and I think a phone number as well. Also, a lot of, depending on where you're going, a lot of host universities will offer an airport pickup, but they need to know your arrival information usually like at least a week or two before you arrive. So be sure that there should be more information about this in your pre-departure information tab, but you can also, again, reach out to your host university coordinator to make sure that you are signed up for this, you're going to the right airport, you know when they're picking you up, who's picking you up, all that information. I've already mentioned this, but again, make electronic copies of all your important documents, and you can upload them to a Google Drive and other online storage system and bring them in your carry-on. In touch. Determine before you leave how you plan to stay in touch with your family and friends back home. If you know that you're not going to have access to Wi-Fi or be able to call them right when you get there, make sure that they know that, so they don't, you know, panic and call us and are worried about where you are. Make sure they know that it may take you a little bit to get in touch with them. But when you do have access to Wi-Fi, try your best to let them know, I got there safely, I'm doing great, because they want to obviously make sure that you are there safe and sound. You have a link for tips for staying in touch. You can go to tips for staying in touch on our website. And then, yeah, remember to contact your family when you safely arrive. All right, so you can connect with other ISEP students and share your story if you want. You can become a digital ambassador. We love to see what students are doing while they're abroad. You can do like an Instagram takeover where you show like the day in the life in Ecuador or Bolivia. Feel free to follow us on Twitter and Instagram and see other students' experiences and updates from ISEP. You can also use the hashtag ISEP Study Abroad to share photos and updates. Again, we'd love to see what students are doing on their programs. All right, I think that is it. I hope that you enjoyed this presentation and learned a little bit something about Ecuador and Bolivia. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me before you go. You can also reach out to your host university coordinator, is probably the better contact for things like course registration and housing and stuff like that. But again, feel free to reach out to me. All right, well, I hope you have a wonderful time abroad.